Good morning, this is the Eager Beaver Show.
You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. PsychicTarot.ca, book your tarot reading and unlock your spiritual journey. And the Pepper Master, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. Well, good evening and hello, kids and cubs, and welcome to season 6 and episode number, I believe it is 919 of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. Nights. I love it when I get a chance to do that. Today, recording day, is still Tuesday, June 2nd, 2026, and it is gearing up to be a lovely evening here at the Beaver Lodge. I am your host, the Eager Beaver, pronouns he, him, hey, Mr. Beaver Ray, and not with me as usual is my good friend, Mr. Grizzly. Big thank you goes to our podcast founding sponsors, the Pepper Master, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, and PsychicTarot.ca. Kids and cubs, how's your mental health doing this evening? Still doing well. At my part, the nap did not come. It's been a day here. Apologies for not being able to give an hour or even two warning as I'd hoped. There was a moment around 5 o'clock where I had come to the computer to do that, but then was called away pretty much the millisecond I sat. My little took us down to be able to do that. And it's been go, go, go ever since. So yeah, Beaver After Dark, indeed. And obviously no opportunity to give an hour or two warning as I had hoped and promised, but I did, an attempt was made, but unfortunately, like I said, life, Beaver Sweetie duties called, and had to take care of that. But I did want to. I almost didn't do one this evening because I was starting to think, it's a little late, especially since I'm going to do a show tomorrow. But given that I'm going to be doing a show later, because I'm going to be spending the morning ensuring that I'm doing my patriotic duty and cheering on Felix Auger-Aliassime at the French Open, and also Gabriela Dabrowski, who will be playing tomorrow morning as well. I might have to be watching matches on two screens at the same time, if that is possible, because the matches will overlap. I figured I would do one this evening, and whoever's not here this evening might watch it tomorrow morning. But I figured at the end of the day I should probably do it, because then I would have to try and do two tomorrow, and I know that tomorrow I definitely do not have time. Not sure how long this one will be. I've put a lot in the description. Not sure how much I'll be able to get to before I conk out, but I will do my best, because as your queen, as you know, I live to serve. So let's get into it. Well, thank you so much, Kit Lori, for saying what a lovely evening surprise. I'm glad that you're here. I don't think that there might be a lot of people watching live tonight. In fact, I think right now I have Kit Uncover and Kit Lori, and that may be it, unless there's people watching from other channels and I haven't seen them pop in on the chat yet. But that's okay. It could be an intimate affair. I did think, however, as the credits were rolling, darn, I should have gone and got myself a glass of wine. And I didn't. So maybe when I run a clip or something, maybe I'll have a chance to make a quick jog to the kitchen, grab one, and come back before the clip is over. Oh, we have the Breens. Yay! Hello. I see the applause. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And of course, a kid on cover. I spread the word. Yes, you did. Yes, you did. Thank you. So let's just get into it. Not too many formalities this evening because I do want to get to bed at a reasonable time tonight. Um, this morning, I had intended to speak about Doug Ford, and of course, well, we got busy with the other subjects, so we didn't have time to get to it. So let's talk about him because there is some news, lots of news around for him. But one of them being, as you know, Doug Ford is kind of drowning right now politically, like very much so. There's a lot going on with him. We have, what he's done to students with OSAP. There was a whole day of protest on the weekend against his policies. We have all the various contracts that he has a problem, in particular, things that were not so great with what he wanted to do with a Billy Bishop Airport. Also, um, the whole thing with the gravy plane, of course, was on the list. Um, there's been a lot. There's been a lot for him, and well, he hasn't been handling it well, to be totally honest. Uh, Principally because, well, he's not used to his folksy stuff not working. But it isn't working for him, and it's even starting to show up in the polls. Um, and it's showing up in relations with his party as well. Uh, One of the things that happened when sometimes when this happens to Doug Ford, and we haven't seen it very often because normally he has a way to, unlike other conservative leaders, Doug Ford will quickly pull back when he feels he's gone too far, like he did with the gravy plane. Um, but even when he does that, sometimes things don't work out for well because with the gravy plane, he pulled back. But people have been asking for receipts and they did not come. And then, in addition to the receipts, we found out that there was a extra $200,000 bill for all the contract stuff and legal fees and a whole bunch of stuff that happens when you make a purchase of that kind. And there's been some questions about, well, who's going to pay that $200,000? Because, well, taxpayers feel that they shouldn't have to pay it. That's absolutely for sure. Um, but Doug Ford doesn't think that he should pay it. We know damn well that the party ain't going to pay it. This should be a Doug Ford personal expense because Doug Ford was getting this plane for himself. In fact, Doug Ford was kind of got caught making some comments suggesting that uh, he's been taking uh, he's been traveling a lot commercial up until I think 2025, and therefore he doesn't need to be frugal with money anymore, with our money anymore, which is kind of hilarious because the way that it works isn't that I'm frugal with your money for a certain amount of time and then I get to do what I want. We did find out that along the way that Doug Ford uh, stopped flying commercial somewhere sometime in 2025 and has been flying much higher class and much more expensively since then. That isn't great. And it kind of that part I don't know. Like, there's been this whole um, thing with him, right? Starting with that van that he wanted to have detailed, or truck or sedan or whatnot, but that he wanted to have detailed specifically when he came into power, and that was uh, denied him. And we see the size of his cottage, and it's not really a cottage, right? It's a full blown, pretty much mansion on a lake. Um, but according to Tina Yazdani, who's been doing some excellent work on this. She says an exhaustive review of roughly 200 flights in Doug Ford's calendar reveals he essentially stopped flying commercial in late 2025, switching almost entirely to private flights then. Opposition blasted him during question period, but Ford insists he's better than former premiers. Huh, really? So let's take a little look at some work here by Tina Yazdani. We're going to have a lot of stuff probably from her on this because Doug Ford seemed somewhat of a vendetta against her somehow and managed to get her fired. I believe it was from City News that she was on, and then she ended up at the Trillium. And by the way, kids and cubs, if you're looking for some independent media to support with your dollar, trillium.ca, I believe it is if you are in Ontario and you want to be kept informed of what's going on here. Maybe it's not trillium.ca. Let me see what it is. Trillium.ca. I am so sorry. Trillium.ca. So let's take a look at what Ms. Yazdani, intrepid journalist, had to say specifically about this.
Premier Doug Ford's use of private flights has taken off. We did an exhaustive search of the Premier's calendar entries. They were obtained by my colleague Charlie Pinkerton through the Freedom of Information system. They date back to when he took office in 2018 up until this past February, and we looked at about 200 of his flights. He essentially stopped flying commercial in late 2025, switching almost exclusively to private flights. In fact, since January of last year, almost 70% of his flights have been private, and 9 out of the last 10 flights logged in these calendars were also private. And our reporting resulted in a heated question period this morning. Take a listen.
Did the Premier decide to spend people's hard-earned money on a private jet because he got a little too used to the good life?
I've saved millions of dollars. I didn't go on junkets all over the world and spend millions and millions of dollars. I've saved the taxpayers millions of dollars. I will continue flying on commercial like I did just on Friday. I guess you missed that when I was on Air Canada. And you know something, Madam Speaker, I will continue flying commercial with the OPP, and there will be times that we'll be flying charter. But that's the difference between myself and other premiers. Look it up. And I've saved millions of dollars on flying around.
Oh, he's really been roughing it. Eh? Roughing it. Roughing it. How did we get from I'm the only premier in history who refuses to use the Premier's plane to I only fly private?
We found out today, we've had it confirmed that the Premier has stopped flying commercial, essentially. He's been flying charter or OPP for a very long time now. He got a taste of that private jet lifestyle. He doesn't want to give it up, apparently.
He's just lost touch. He's lost his way. He's not a man of the people.
Now, the shift in the Premier's travel habits started months before his government purchased a $28.9 million private jet for his use. The government quickly returned that jet because of fierce public pushback. This is all in stark contrast to his travel habits when he first became Premier in 2018, when he flew almost exclusively commercial. Before question period, my colleague Jack Cowan asked the Premier why his travel habits have shifted so dramatically.
There's no Premier that has ever taken more commercial flights than myself. They had the 2 planes, the Premiers. I got rid of them. I'll continue flying commercial.
There is so much more to this story, and you can read up all about it at thetrillium.ca.
All right. Doug, apparently, remember that song back in the day? With OPP, yeah, you know me. Yeah, OPP, other people's planes. Ontario provincial planes, perhaps? Ontario police planes, maybe. I don't know. But Doug Ford, apparently, right? I've logged in 7 years. So now I get to stop and do it cushy. That's not how it works, of course. Um, really, that's not how it works. Um, so yeah, not great at all. Um, that $200,000, by the way, Doug Ford seems to believe he well, not only does he not have to pay it, or he was kind of saying he would pay it, then not, and uh, finally, essentially, for all intents and purposes, we can't really know whether or not. Again, we have Tina Yazdani asking questions in a scrum here of Mr. Ford. And whoops, that's an article that I will be bringing to you in a second. And let's see how Doug Ford handled this one, because, of course, again, this is what a drowning premier looks like. Tina Yazdani said moments ago, this is on May 26th, Premier Ford won't commit to paying taxpayers back the $200K spent on private jets, calling the controversy, quote, an old story. He said he's already saved taxpayers millions of dollars by flying commercial over the years and only charter flights when needed. Okay.
You mentioned you're ticked off about this $200,000 in fees with the plane. I mean, why should taxpayers be footing the bill for that?
You know something, I think the plane is an old story, but yeah, I'm ticked off all right. I don't like wasting money like that, but in saying it, if you add up all the commercial flights I've had, I've saved the taxpayers millions of dollars. I've saved them over $12 billion, and that's what's frustrating. I pride myself on reducing taxes and on businesses and people. So yeah, it's frustrating, but it's a mistake. And actually, I didn't communicate it properly. We had terrible comms on that, in my opinion. I should have communicated it better. But here nor there, it's done. I was on the commercial flight, Air Canada and Sault Ste. Marie. I'll continue doing commercial. I'll continue flying with the OPP, and when needed, I'll have to charter.
But help us understand why. Acknowledge it was a mistake there. Like, it just seems like such an easy thing to do to pay it back.
You know something? I've saved millions and millions of dollars by taking commercial flights. I'm the only premier that's never went on junkets, that spent millions of dollars that other premiers have all over the world. And I don't mind going over there for business, because Vic Fideli does, but he comes back with businesses. And I've saved literally millions taking commercial for
shifted your travel habits
years.
A lot.
No, but for 8 years, and you're calling private flights OPP. That's not considered a private flight. But when there is time, I have to charter. I got to charter. But
So apologies for the low volume on that, Kits and Cubs. That was at source. But then again, you see Doug Ford again reverting back to, I've saved millions of dollars. I've saved millions of dollars. Yes, the fact that you've saved millions of dollars, if that is indeed true, in the past does not absolve you from continuing to save us millions of dollars today. That's the problem, Doug. The problem is that you stopped being the person you said you were. At some point, you thought you had it like that. That's why you bought the plane and announced it to us like a fait accompli. That's why you didn't put it in the budget when you presented it. You just said, hey, bought the plane, it's done. You didn't ask. You decided that you would ask for forgiveness rather than asking for permission, and it blew up in your face. All your good deeds of the past do not absolve this bad deed. That was a bad idea. It was a bad idea to buy the plane. It was a bad idea to announce it as a fait accompli. It was a bad idea to not show us the receipts. It was a bad idea to say that you would sell it back the next day and not prove that you have. It was a bad idea to not have at least your party cover the $200,000 that shouldn't be ours to pay because you screwed up, because you got greedy and you got your hand caught in the cookie jar and the lid slammed down on it pretty hard that you're saying, owie. None of that is our fault. That's all you. You should be entirely responsible for that. Either you personally or your party, because they allowed you to do that, one or the other, but that should not be a fee that comes on taxpayers. You should be made to pay that. And then to have the unmitigated gall to state that nobody should be questioning you on that. is a little disturbing, to be totally honest. And here's the thing: is that that was on the 26th, I believe. Of course, when he was asked about this on May 5th earlier, it was Ontarians are more concerned about other issues. So first, Ontarians are more concerned about other issues. That's why he hasn't released the receipts. No, we may be concerned about more concerned about other issues, but we're hella concerned about this one. And then 21 days later, right? It's an old story. Why? Because you determined clearly it's not an old story. You're still being asked about it. You want it to be an old story, but you wanting it to be an old story and saying that it is, as a fact, is what's called wish casting. You're stating what you wish to be true as being true, but it is not. It's not an old story, and we still haven't seen the receipts, and we're still wondering who's going to be paying that $200,000. But Doug Ford, man of the people, thinks we don't deserve to know that, which is really interesting. Like I mentioned, this weekend there was some protests. So let's take a look at Tina Yazdani reporting from said protest.
An estimated 5,000 people were at Queen's Park today to protest what they call the privatization of Ontario's healthcare system. They say the Ford government has been funneling tens of millions of dollars away from public hospitals and into private clinics. Is there anything specific you would want to see the government change?
A commitment to a publicly funded system that meets the needs of our communities.
What kind of things are you experiencing in your work?
Definitely staffing shortages, burnout are the two biggest ones.
I did have a chance today to ask the health minister about some of the accusations made during this protest. Here's what she had to say. I know that the government does make significant investments in the public system, but given the significant investments also in the private system and private clinics, are you willing to admit that your government is working towards a two-tier system at this point?
Absolutely not. You know, it has never been an either or conversation, which frankly I think some organizations try to make it so. When we make the investments in both our hospital system and in our community, we're actually making more choices available to the patients.
Isn't that the very definition of a two-tier system though? Like, can you explain the differences to me then?
It absolutely means that that individual with an OHIP card can make a choice about whether that MRI, that CT scan that they need and their physician or primary care provider has requested, they make a choice about where they want to have that. Could be in their community hospital, particularly as we expand MRI and CT access, and yes, it can be in a community facility that might be more convenient and closer to home.
They're transferring now hundreds of millions away from the public hospitals, which they pushed into deficit and forced into cuts, over to private for-profit clinics that they're expanding to take over their services, take their staff and their services and their money.
So there you go, kids and cubs. More excellent reporting from Tina Yazdani here from The Trillium about what was going on at the protest. Again, asking a very salient question about whether or not we had de facto have two-tier healthcare, or that's the goal of this government. And it's really interesting to watch alleged Minister of Health, Sylvia Jones, deny it. Again, when we can all see it happening. Other stuff that has been going on with this guy. Let's see, what else do we have here on him? Article that I said I was going to bring to you about the plane itself. Ford's penchant for flying private took off before jet purchase records show. From Charlie Pinkerton, Tina Yazdani, and Jack Howen. Wow, okay. Actually, this is a really in-depth article here. That's 10 minutes and 15 seconds long if it was being read according to whatever. You can listen to the article here. I'm not sure I'm going to do all of that. But it says here that the trend began months before the Ford government's recent purchase and swift return following fierce public pushback of the $28.9 million private jet for the Premier's use, having used the Freedom of Information system. It says here that let's see, from June 29th, 2018 to February 4th, 2026, including he took about roughly 200 flights in that period. The calendars are now expected to be exempt from Freedom of Information requests under their recent changes to the Records Access Law. Since January 2025, at least 2/3 of the flights Ford has taken have been private, including at least 9 of the final 10 flights logged in the available calendars. The last time the Premier's calendars show he flew commercial was in late September of last year. It's a stark contrast to how he traveled when he first became Premier. Stating here, like she said in the report, that Ford flew almost exclusively commercial for the first 2 years he was Premier. Ford traveled very little during COVID-19 pandemic, but continued taking mostly commercial flights when he did. At the time, the Ontario Provincial Police owned a single Pilatus PC-12, a small plane that can typically fit 6 to 9 passengers. The OPP began procuring a second one during the pandemic and eventually bought it in May 2023 for $8.91 million. Ford's travel habits changed after its acquisition. So basically, this is the second plane. The OPP got a second plane. And it's after that Ford's travel habits changed after its acquisition. So one could be wondering if that second plane was a plane that was indeed bought for Ford in May 2023, that the OP was certainly using for OPP business when needed, but bought primarily for Ford. And then I guess that $8.91 million plane wasn't enough, and that now he needed a $28.9 million jet. Because remember, the Premier told us that it was not only for his use, but for the rest of his government's use too, and it was to fly to a whole bunch of places, in remote areas to get there faster. And then we found out that that plane would only be able to land on 10% of the airstrips in the province. So he was definitely not going to cap his casing with that, or Hearst, or Sturgeon Falls. The Premier's calendar showed that from the spring of 2023 through the end of 2024, he took a roughly even number of private flights, including on the OPP's plane and on commercial flights. Although entries in Ford's calendars weren't always explicitly clear that he flew on an OPP plane, the information they include suggests he relied on provincial police aircraft for private flights he took from May 2023 until the end of that year, if not longer. Wow. The Premier's office said in a statement that it didn't have any role in the OPP purchasing its second PC-12 nor third Pilatus plane, a PC-24 that can also fit several people, which the provincial police acquired late last year. And if you believe that, I have some oceanfront property on the north coast of Saskatchewan. Quote, the government is not involved in decisions made by the Ontario Provincial Police regarding their operational needs or the day-to-day operation of their aircraft, the Premier's office statement said. And this is hard to believe because, that whole thing with Ron Tavener that Doug Ford tried to instill his buddy as the chief of the OPP. Remember that? Come and tell me that the OPP, his relationship with him is not cozy. Let's put it that way. Nobody believes that. Premier Ford frequently travels across the province, across Canada, and more recently to the U.S. to make the case for Ontario, as well as to meet with families, businesses, and workers. Decisions about travel are made on a case-by-case basis, depending on security, scheduling, the availability of commercial flights, and the availability of the OPP aircraft. Let's see what else. Talking here about the 2025 Ontario election campaign, which spanned from late January to the near end February. Ford frequently flew private during the month-long election campaign. The PC party paid for his travel during this period, which included 2 trips to Washington, D.C. The party later reported to Elections Ontario that it spent almost $400,000 on the plane charter companies during the election. Ontario's major political parties are mostly funded by supporter donations. They do, however, receive some taxpayer funds based on how many votes they receive in elections. Let's see. What else do we have here? The Premier's preferred private charter company of late has been Sky Service Business Aviation. We should really look to see if there's any personal close relationship between the owners of that business and Doug Ford, given the way that he seems to like to do business. Ford used Sky Service for 7 short hop trips between Toronto and Ottawa late last year and early 2026, according to his calendars. Non-stop commercial flights leave from Toronto to Ottawa about 20 times a day. Ford also flew private to Saskatoon, Boston, Thunder Bay, Sarnia, and Kenora within the last year, calendars show. Interesting. Let's see, what else do we have here? Responding to the data, the Trillium compiled, official opposition and NDP leader Mayotte Stiles said in a statement that, quote, "It looks like the Premier developed a taste for taxpayer-funded luxury lifestyle and had decided the people of Ontario should pay for his upgrade. Instead of helping himself to private jet travel on the public dime, this Premier should be focused on fixing Ontario's healthcare systems so patients are no longer treated in hallways and building more homes so Ontarians can actually afford a place to live," Stiles added. The Liberals and the Greens shared similar criticisms. At a time when nearly 700,000 Ontarians are out of work and Ontario has the worst youth unemployment rate in the country, Doug Ford chose to spend taxpayer dollars so he could fly around like a billionaire instead of investing to make life more affordable and create opportunities for the people of Ontario, said Stephanie Bowman, the Liberals' critic on finance issues. Bowman and John Fraser, the Liberals' interim leader, also said that Ford's flight history shows that the provincial government didn't need to acquire the Challenger jet. Quote, "The government was already feeling that appetite with charter flights and OPP aircraft," Fraser said. "The jet was not a necessity. It was an indulgence." Green leader Mike Schreiner said in a statement that, quote, "Money this Premier has spent on private flights could have gone towards housing people, fixing classrooms, or hiring nurses. It could have made a real difference in the lives of hardworking people. It's clear that since taking office, Doug Ford has become increasingly out of touch with the people of Ontario," Schreiner added. So yeah, that's some interesting stuff from Mr. Ford. There's also some news with regard to what he wanted to do with Billy Bishop Airport in terms of, he wanted to make it such that it could accommodate bigger planes. It seems that there has been objection to that as well. We have found out a day ago that Ford government's freedom of information restrictions quashed Village Media's request on how the plan came to be for that. According to Aidan Shamandi, the Ford government is legally shielding its internal plans to expand Billy Bishop Airport using newly passed legislation to bury government records on the controversial project. Questions about when the government decided to expand the airport, who they consulted, and how the move will affect Toronto's waterfront may have been answered by a Freedom of Information request filed by Toronto Today, which is a sister site to Barrie Today. However, due to the Ford government's recent changes to Ontario's FOI system, they will forever be shielded from public view. On March 10th, the day Premier Doug Ford unveiled his expansion plan, Toronto Today filed a Freedom of Information request seeking all communications between staffers in the Premier's office related to the plan, plus all records such as briefing notes, where civil servants or political staff outlined the issues and the path forward. At the time, Ontario's Freedom of Information system was still operating as it had for the better part of 40 years. Journalists and members of the public could fill out a form detailing the information they sought, pay a $5 fee, and wait up to 30 days for the targeted institution to respond. The government would then provide a timeline on when the requested records would be disclosed, or whether they would be withheld according to the numerous exemptions already built into the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. Days later, Stephen Crawford, Minister of Public and Business Service Delivery, announced sweeping changes to the system. Under the proposed overhaul, records held by the Premier, cabinet ministers, and the political staff would be completely exempt from the Act. That put Toronto Today's request on a time crunch. If the records didn't come before the bill passed, the amendments would likely prevent them from ever becoming public by categorically blocking requests targeting political offices, exactly the kind of information sought in this request. The legislation, Bill 97, was officially introduced on March 24. The government then used its majority at Queen's Park to fast-track it through the legislative process, skipping committee hearings where ministers and members of the public can testify and answer questions about the bill, and where MPPs can propose amendments. On April 10, just over a week before the bill was sped through the legislature, a civil servant tasked with handling Toronto Today's request extended the response timeline until May 22nd. The stated reason was the need to consult an unknown non-government third party, a standard practice, which couldn't be completed within the original 30 days. On April 24, just 1 month after it was introduced, Bill 97 became law. Then on May 29, the same civil servant sent Toronto Today a letter confirming the Ford government's newly enacted law officially killed the request. Interesting. It seems that Ontario NDP leader has sent a letter to Mark Carney asking him to stop the Ford government's plans for the Billy Bishop Airport, arguing, quote, he is the only one who could stop this expansion. The latest letter follows a similar plea last month, in which Stiles argued it wasn't popular in Toronto and didn't have a business case to justify the move. This is according to Isaac Callan and Colin DeMello of Global News. The expansion of Billy Bishop was first pitched by Premier at the end of February when he told a Toronto Region Board of Trade event he wanted to see the city's island airport expanded to host jets. Since then, the Ford government has tabled a bill to take control of a portion of the airport from the city and give itself expropriation powers over a large swath of the island and waterfront. It has also said it plans to use new powers to designate the area a special economic zone where local and provincial laws can be bypassed. Quote, the implementation of this legislation will rip a beloved space from the public, Stiles wrote in her letter to Carney. Residents of the downtown neighborhoods will be severely impacted by whatever Premier Ford decides to do with the Toronto Islands and the Billy Bishop Airport expansion. Toronto will see more traffic and worse congestion in one of the busiest parts of Canada's largest city. Stiles told reporters she believed the Prime Minister should intervene to stop the province's plans, something it could do as a party to the tripartite agreement that governs the airport. Quote, they have the lion's share of the vote as part of the tripartite agreement, and he needs to use that power right now to stop this. Ontario Green Party leader Mark Schreiner said he backed the NDP's request. Quote, the federal government should be stepping in on Billy Bishop, he said. I call on every federal MP, especially in the city of Toronto, to say no to this. While the Prime Minister's office did not answer questions from Global News, a spokesperson for the Federal Minister of Transport said a statement. Quote, we will work closely with the province of Ontario and our partners on Billy Bishop Toronto City Airport to reflect a modern and sustainable transportation system. We will support the long-term success of the airport while ensuring that critical air connections remain a top priority. Speaking during question period, Transportation Minister Prabmeet Sakaria defended the plan. Quote, leaders across this country are talking about the nation-building projects, he said. We are putting forward projects like the Billy Bishop Airport that are going to transform the way we compete against the world. Billy Bishop will help support that and continue to improve our competitiveness across the world. This is hardly a nation-building project. That is terrible spin. It also would appear that, according to Corné Van Hopen, the editor of Yahoo News Canada, that there might be some type of American connection here. Criticism is mounting that the provincial government's plan for major expansion of Toronto Billy Bishop Airport would hand greater influence over a key piece of city infrastructure to American-backed investors. Controversy is brewing after Ontario pushed through the legislation paving the way for the project, which includes Newport Aviation, a company backed and controlled by U.S. investment firm J.P. Morgan Asset Management. Doug Ford promised to stand up to American threats. Leader of Ontario's official opposition, Merritt Stiles, shared in a statement posted to X. Now he's letting a J.P. Morgan-connected company expand Billy Bishop and destroy Toronto's waterfront. This is a betrayal. At the heart of the plan is a proposal to allow jet aircrafts to operate out of the airport, something currently prohibited under an existing agreement governing Billy Bishop. The plan would require runway expansions, terminal upgrades, and changes to airport infrastructure to accommodate larger aircraft and more passengers. The Ontario government argues that the expansion would help meet growing demand for air travel in southern Ontario, reduce pressure on Toronto Pearson Airport, and create thousands of jobs. The province says Billy Bishop currently serves about 2 million passengers a year and could eventually handle as many as 10 million annually under the Toronto Port Authority's modernization plan, according to a statement shared by the province. Quote, we need this. We need it desperately, Ford told reporters at Queen's Park earlier this year. This is a crown jewel. We're one of the largest cities in North America. Other cities like New York and Chicago have 2 airports, and this is an economic driver. It's going to create competition. Sure. Yeah. For John Schell, chair of Social Capital Partners, a Canadian nonprofit focused on policies that promote economic security, ownership, and wealth-building opportunities, the debate goes beyond Billy Bishop Airport itself. He says Canada needs to think harder about who owns the assets that help keep the country moving. Quote, Canada needs an ownership strategy to match its sovereignty strategy, Schell wrote in an email sent to Yahoo News Canada. The airport's project backers include investors tied to U.S. financial giant J.P. Morgan, a connection that is sparking concerns about foreign involvement in critical infrastructure. Schell says those concerns shouldn't be dismissed. Quote, we can't pretend that the world is still organized as a free-flowing globalized market. Those days are over and ownership is being weaponized to support national interests. Schell argues that ownership matters because it influences who benefits from important assets and who ultimately has a say over their future. He points to ports, airports, and other critical infrastructure as examples of assets that can have strategic value beyond simply generating revenue. The debate also comes as Premier Doug Ford has repeatedly pushed back against U.S. political rhetoric and declared that Canada is not for sale. Shell sees a contradiction in that message if the governments are willing to support projects backed by foreign investors. Quote, you simply cannot have a sovereignty strategy without an ownership strategy. They are one and the same, he shares. If you're encouraging the purchase of Canadian assets by foreign interests, you are actively subverting Canadian sovereignty. Shell argues Canada has enough domestic capital through pension funds and institutional investors to finance major infrastructure projects without relying heavily on foreign ownership. Hey, we have a Canada Sovereign Wealth Fund. Right? The proposal is also sparking debate on social media when some users question how the expansion aligns with Ford government's repeated claims that Canada is not for sale. Here are some thoughts some concerned Ontarians residents are sharing over social media. Member of Parliament for Spadina Fort York, Chris Glover, left his thoughts in an X post. JP Morgan stands to gain significantly if an airport goes forward. More passengers equals more revenue and in the long run a more valuable asset. In not one case that I've been able to find have any lobbyists acknowledged any of that in the public, provincial, or federal registries. Sorry. So yeah, interesting things from Doug Ford with regard to that. But those are not the only issues with Doug Ford lately. There's also been other issues to talk about, and one of them would be the defense bank that has been announced. Canada won the right to be the home of that investment bank. I'm trying to get an article to open here, and it's there we go. It was just temperamental. According to Mohammed Adam in the Ottawa Citizen, said that Doug Ford just threw Ottawa under the bus in an opinion piece. Premier Doug Ford's unqualified support for Toronto's bid to host a multinational defense bank is a slap in the face of the city of Ottawa, which also wants the new bank in the capital to secure new jobs and alleviate the effects of federal job cuts. Even knowing that Ottawa is also in the running, the Premier said recently that Toronto is, quote, the only city in Canada capable of hosting the multinational bank. What is Ottawa? Chopped liver? The comments clearly undermine Mayor Mark Sutcliffe's efforts to bring the bank and associated jobs to Ottawa. The federal government is planning to shed some 30,000 jobs in the public service, and Ottawa is expected to bear the brunt of the cuts. And as part of his plan to cushion the impact, Sutcliffe is hoping to draw the bank and its projected 3,500 new jobs to the city. The International Defense Bank, formerly called the Defense Security and Resilience Bank, or the DSRB, is being set up to provide long-term, low-cost financing for defense and security projects for NATO members and partners. Canadian cities, including Montreal and Vancouver, are also chasing the bank. In such a big competition with so much at stake and two Ontario cities chasing the same prize, Ford should not be taking sides. He should have sat this one out and left it to the mayors to make their case. But Ford, ever the mayor of the premier or the mayor of Ontario, or trying to be the mayor of Toronto from the premier seat. Ford may believe that as the center of Canada's financial industry, Toronto is the best place for the bank, but that argument is for Toronto Mayor Olivia Chow to make, not the Premier. Just as Sutcliffe could also argue that Ottawa, the seat of the federal government, embassies, and the national defense establishment, is uniquely suited for the bank. Ford is the Premier of Ontario, all of Ontario, and he should be even-handed in dealing with every part of the province. The Premier's intervention in favor of Toronto reinforces the belief, particularly among Ottawa residents, that the capital is often an afterthought at Queen's Park. Whether it is funding for transit, homelessness, and housing, Ottawa often gets shortchanged compared to Toronto. In 2023, Sutcliffe questioned why Toronto was getting 60 times more funding for homelessness than Ottawa. Quote, we recently learned that Ottawa will receive $845,100 of this homelessness funding, while Toronto will receive $48 million. That's almost 60 times as much, despite Toronto's population being approximately 3 times larger than Ottawa's, Sutcliffe said in a letter to Ford at the time. Then a report from the provincial financial watchdog, the Financial Accountability Office, revealed that Toronto gets more money per capita for transit than Ottawa. In 2022-2023, Toronto received $191 per resident in transit funding, while Ottawa got $59.61. That gap was projected to grow in 2024-25, with Toronto getting $196.49, while Ottawa's share decreased to $31.91. In the midst of all of this, Sutcliffe launched the Fairness for Ottawa campaign to secure money from the province and the Fed, saying Ottawa taxpayers were being shortchanged. And now this. Consider this. If you are a decision maker on the location of the bank and you hear the Premier of a province where 2 cities are vying for the right to host the bank say that the only one of them can do the job, how much consideration would you give the other city? Some may argue that the Premier is merely trying to boost Toronto's chances against what may be stiff competition from other cities, but Ford shouldn't undermine Ottawa to boost Toronto. Why not champion both cities? No question Ford has thrown Ottawa under the bus on this one, under a bus that will be funded at $39.61 per person. See what I did there? Ottawa, Doug Ford also took a shot at Ottawa. One of the things that Doug Ford does in order to make it look like he is actually working on behalf of the people of Ontario is a few days before a decision is going to come down, start chastising people, especially if it's a joint decision or a joint project, the other people associated with the project for not moving fast enough or for dragging their heels. And Doug Ford did that with regard to funding for housing, HST cuts, and all that kind of stuff. There was a part of it that needed to be done in Ottawa. I'm trying to put up a comment here from Kit Uncover the News, but it is not showing up for some reason. There we go. He kept on, went to the mics and started blasting Mark Carney, claiming that Ottawa was dragging its heels. And of course, sure enough, on schedule, the Prime Minister did announce that the funding or whatever Ottawa needed to do was in fact going to be done, and that I think it was $8.8 million for the project or for the effort, the initiative went through. I'm going to take a look at that. See if I can bring it up here. Nope. Let's try this one more time. Maybe this will work. There we go. So the partnership had been announced on March 30th, 2026. But then the decision came through, and then finally one day ago, the program became open for applications. And I'm sorry, it wasn't 8.8 million, it was 8.8 billion. Federal provincial funding program will support housing enabling infrastructure projects in municipalities that substantially reduce and maintain development charges, according to a news release from the government of Ontario. It says the Ontario government is opening up applications for a new program that is intended to reduce building costs and speed up the construction of new homes. As part of the up to $8.8 billion partnership announced in March, the Development Charge Reduction Program will deliver federal and provincial funding over 10 years for housing enabling infrastructure projects, with funding prioritized for municipalities that reduce government charges for all residential types by 30% to 50% or greater, and maintain the reductions for at least 3 years. So this is not, I was mistaken, this is not the HST thing. This was the thing to reduce development charges specifically. In March 2026, Ontario and Canada agreed to a cost-match structure to provide a combined $8.8 billion over 10 years for infrastructure investments in Ontario, with Canada's share of the funding flowing through the Build Community Strong Fund provincial and territorial stream, pending an agreement under this fund. The Build Community Strong Fund was launched by the federal government earlier this year to accelerate infrastructure projects across the country to reduce costs. That was the big fund that we talked about on the show about a month ago or so. That was about $51.5 million that was put into that. The Development Charge Reduction Program will make life-changing differences for families and municipalities across Ontario by lowering the cost of new homes by tens of thousands of dollars, said Rob Flack, Ontario's Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing. Along with the HST relief announced in Ontario's 2026 budget, this program will make homes across the province more affordable. I encourage municipal leaders across Ontario to work with us to reduce development charges so we can get more shovels in the ground and keep the dream of homeownership alive in Ontario. Let's see, what do we have else out here? So yes, this just basically says, yeah, it's more process stuff here. That's not particularly important for our purposes. So that funding came through after Doug Ford making a big performative scene that Ottawa was somehow dragging its heels, and that was never the case. with regard to the HST rebate, 5 days ago in Toronto Life, according to Eric Stober, it says that in March, Prime Minister Mark Carney and Premier Doug Ford and Mayor Olivia Chow announced an $8.8 billion deal that includes slashing the 13% HST on all new home purchases. The policy was designed to help buyers save up to $130,000 on new residences valued under $1.5 million. Now, a new report suggests that the move is making waves in the GTHA real estate market. The Building Industry and Land Development Association said Wednesday that 1,100 new homes sold in April, a healthy increase from 384 sold during the same period last year. The purchases comprised 901 single-family homes and 199 condos. Single-family home sales surpassed the 10-year average of 744 for the first time since 2020. Home sales were 55% below the 10-year average of 2,418. The high-rise market in particular continues to struggle, with condo sales 88% below the 10-year average of 5,751. Quote, April new home sales responded to the new HST rebate program as sales showed a noticeable increase, said Edward Jegg of Altus Group, a research manager on the report. Pricing continued to be competitive, with nearly like-for-like prices before and after the introduction of the rebate, suggesting the full rebate was flowing through to consumers. Jegg went on to say that April surge is expected to continue thanks to pent-up demand, especially as more prospective buyers learn about the HST rebate. In addition to that, kids and cubs, or in addition, another take on this is that, come on, work with me here. The computer is being a little temperamental here. Come on, you can do it. Okay, nope. The content is not available anymore. So it's something that was there that had been deleted. So I do not have another take for you on that. So that has been going on as well. In addition to all of that, why is everything stalling tonight? This is very strange. I'm trying to make seamless transitions and nothing is cooperating with me, unfortunately. Another thing that is going on here in Ontario, that while Doug Ford keeps on saying that he is for the people, for all people, particularly the poors, Doug Ford seems to not like poor people very much. Posted May 27th by CBC News, the Doug Ford government has defeated an NDP bill that would have removed the Ontario portion of the harmonized sales tax on certain food products and non-alcoholic beverages. Bill 113 called for an amendment of the Retail Sales Tax Act to make life more affordable for Ontario residents, according to the official opposition. The bill failed at second reading on Wednesday, with 39 in favor and 68 opposed. Ontario NDP leader Merritt Stiles told reporters after the vote that many people are having trouble making ends meet in the province. Quote, I thought it was shameful to see the government, all, including the Premier, rush in to vote against that legislation. People in this province, what they care about right now is that life has become less affordable. The HST applies to prepared foods such as rotisserie chickens, ready-made salads, and sushi. It also applies to snack foods, foods and beverages sold in vending machines, carbonated and non-carbonated beverages. It doesn't apply to basic groceries. Stiles said any small measures, such as removing the HST from certain food items at a time of high inflation at the grocery store, would have helped. Quote, Ontarians are really struggling with the cost of everything. What have we seen from this government? Nothing. Nothing that actually helps people in their pocketbook. Ontario Liberal MPP Lee Fairclough, who is rumored to be throwing her hat into the ring for the Ontario Liberal leadership, said that the Liberal Party supported the NDP bill because the intent of the proposed legislation was to help ordinary people. The affordability of food is very critical, Fairclough said. The goal isn't necessarily, I think, to help the people shopping at Pusateri's to save money. This is about everyday people that are looking to get by and trying to save money on their food. Mike Schreiner, leader of the Green Party of Ontario, said he also voted in favor of the NDP bill. Quote, grocery prices are hitting people hard. Anything we can do to help lower costs for folks is something I think we should do. That's exactly why I think it was wrong that the Ford government voted against it. Finance Minister Peter Bethan-Falvey said the government already has acted to help make life more affordable in Ontario. Quote, we acted early. We cut the personal income tax for the lowest income brackets. We indexed payments for Ontario disability to inflation for low-income seniors, Bethan-Falvey said. We put a lot of money back into people's pockets and will continue to do that. They've not put a lot of money back into people's pockets. That is not true. I live in Ontario. I haven't seen a cent that I know of. So yeah, finally, Doug Ford had a bit of a run-in in the legislature with a friend of the podcast, Tyler Watt, who is the MPP for Nepean. We had him on the show when he was running in an election 2 elections ago, where he did not win a seat, but he remained in the game, presented himself again, and did win this time around. And the gentleman is making quite a name for himself, doing good work, being a good constituency MP, and having some good interventions. Here's an exchange between Mr. Watt and Mr. Ford here. And I am going to present it to you because Doug Ford did something that he does often when he thinks that someone is weaker than him. He bullies them and ridicules them and diminishes them. And Mr. Watt was not having it.
Speaker, through you to the Premier. This session, the Premier has been spending more time managing scandals, crashing out in front of the media, and howling at coyotes than actually addressing the cost of living crisis that are haunting Ontarians. Let's recap. $30 million for a luxury private jet toy for the Premier, a potential $500 million settlement over an air rights lawsuit, the Greenbelt scandal, $8.3 billion in land for PC insiders, a $500 million taxpayer-funded parking lot next to a private spa, hiding the Premier's cell phone records, changing the law to do so, $10 million to strip clubs through the Skills Development Fund. All of this while this government is trying to figure out how to protect this Premier, themselves, and PC insiders, while Ontarians are struggling with cost of living. So, Speaker, through you to the Premier, how can you say that you are fighting for Ontarians when the people cashing in are your friends and Conservative insiders, while people can't afford to put food on their table?
Now, by the way, if you're not noticing in the top right-hand corner, Mike Schreiner of the Green Party is looking at Tyler Watt like he's his son and he's very proud of him.
Nice, the Premier.
You know, Madam Speaker, I got to teach that rookie a few lessons, first of all. First of all, about cutting taxes for people that you don't believe in. You voted against the HST. You voted against getting rid of development charges, saving families over $200,000. They voted against the tax cut that we did, 10.7 cents a litre. They voted against the sticker license renewal that we got rid of, saving over $1 billion. They voted against getting rid of the tolls that they created on the 412, 418, and 407. Madam Speaker, there's no government that has cut $12 billion off the backs of the people and businesses to create more opportunities, more jobs. We've been tilling the soil. That's why we're leading North American in economic development. We are a powerhouse.
Ooh, did Tyler hit a nerve there? Didn't he hit a nerve? Now, watch this, because this is how it's done. I love this part here. Okay, here we go.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. By the way, Premier, I voted for the HST. It's amazing to me how we can just say whatever we want here, but I actually can't call it out a lie.
Facts matter.
Facts matter, Premier.
Facts matter.
And Speaker, for the past 8 years, this government has repeated the same talking points, but the reality facing families tells a completely different story. Every week, I hear from constituents in Nepean who are exhausted by this government's failure to address the cost of living crisis. One constituent wrote to me saying, "The pressure just to survive is taking a severe toll on our physical and mental well-being. Choosing between paying rent or buying groceries has created constant stress, anxiety, exhaustion, and sleepless nights." Something that this Premier clearly doesn't care about because he doesn't actually listen to the people of Ontario anymore. It's all about him. It's all about getting him his jet, his friends' money. It's totally out of control. So, Speaker, through you to the Premier, when Ontarians are struggling to make ends meet, why does this government continue to prioritize the interests of Conservative insiders and the Premier's friends over?
Unfortunately, Mr. Watt was not able to completely finish the question, just like Doug Ford was not able to finish his response. But yeah, I actually voted for the HST cut. But I guess we can just say whatever we want here. Because Doug Ford to his go-to play. They voted against this, they voted against that, they voted against that. No, actually they didn't. Tyler Watt. And, by the way, we are in communication with his office to have him back on the show. And we're trying to arrange for time for that. So again, kits and cubs, if you happen to have some questions about what's going on in Ontario and would like me to ask them to Tyler Watt when we do have him on the show relatively soon, please send them to me. Again, truenortheaglebeaver@gmail.com, or again, I will be putting a post on the posts section of our YouTube channel, inviting questions there as well for them. So yeah, kits and cubs, kind of interesting, hey? Doug Ford getting his butt served to him. And clearly, things are not going well for Doug Ford in many other ways because, well, number one, if we look at some public opinion polling, if you go to 338 Canada, we mentioned last week, we mentioned a couple of weeks ago, I think, that Doug Ford had slipped out and the Progressive Conservatives had slipped out of majority territory if an election were to be held today. There were a few polls that came out recently, one from Main Street on May 6th that showed the PCs at 35 with the Liberals at 31, so just a 4-point spread. One from Léger that showed the PCs at 39 and the Liberals at 34 with a 5-point spread, still the leaderless Liberals. One from Liaison that showed the Liberals and the Conservatives tied at 37, and then one from Abacus, which tends to lean more heavily Conservative, showing the Conservatives at 41 and the Liberals at 31. However, if we take a look at the vote projection numbers, when you add all these numbers in, situation here that shows the progressive conservatives, the allegedly progressive conservatives in Ontario, just 3 points ahead of the Ontario Liberals. And I'm just going to put this up there for you so that you can see it, and hopefully it will appear as I wish it to. And is it up? Nope, not yet. So let me press this, and that will bring it up right here. So we can 38 to 35. The Progressive Conservatives had a peak of 48% on August 31st, 2025, and it's been slowly decreasing since then. And it was a slow decline, as we mentioned on the show, to about 44% on March 20th, and then started to just drop to 42% on April 20th, to 38% on April 29th, and still 38%, but a little lower still on May 24th, with the Ontario Liberals climbing up to 35. But if we are looking at the seats, what that represents in terms of seats, kids and cubs. We are looking at this kind of situation where the PCs would pick up 90 seats and in October on October 21st, 2025, with the NDP at 18 and the Ontario Liberals, let's go here, at 13. And then the PCs, again, slow decline to about 80 seats when we get to March 20th, and then a sharp decline. April 20th down to 69 seats, April 29th down to 59 seats, and now May 24th down to 53 seats, with the Liberals crossing over the NDP and up to 39. So this is a definitely, if an election were held today, the Liberals, the NDP, could get together and deny Ford the ability to run a minority government. But we are looking here since March 20th of this year until, as we said, May 24th, so about 2 months and 4 days, a precipitous drop of 27 seats. The Ontario Progressive Conservatives are in free fall, which may explain the news that came out today that, well, it seems that Doug Ford has decided that he has worked enough already, because the House is about to rise, and according to Alison Jones and Liam Casey of the Canadian Press, Ontario's members of provincial parliament will get an extra long break from the legislature this summer as it takes a 21-week recess. Yes, you heard me correctly, a 21-week recess. The extended break comes after the legislature sat for 30 days following a 14-week winter break. He absolutely needed to be reelected so fast so that he could protect Ontario, and he is taking 35 weeks recess from Parliament and only sat for 30 days. That is ridiculous. Government House Leader Steve Clark says the House will come back on October 27th, the day after the municipal election, so as to not to interfere with that process. Green Party Leader Mike Schreiner says that excuse doesn't hold water, as Premier Doug Ford's government interferes with municipalities all the time. They even meddled in a municipal election while it was going on. He says the government cut the size of Toronto City Council during the 2018 municipal elections and right now is trying to take away that city's control of its island airport. Interim Liberal leader John Fraser says he thinks the decision to avoid the legislature for so long is because Ford can't take the heat over controversies such as the purchase and abrupt return of a private jet. Doug Ford is hoping that if he goes goes quiet for 21 weeks, that's 27, that's 147 days. That maybe Ontarians will forget how much they dislike him. 21 weeks recess. Can you believe that? Absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. We got Tyler Watt again doing a video about that one. So let's bring him on, since he seems to know how to get under Doug Ford's skin. Kit Linda, JFC. Christ on a bike riding sideways. They should get a prorated paycheck for all these breaks. You know? Kit Linda, I would love to see Doug Ford have to govern as a minority government. Wow. That's absolutely insane. Let's take a look here and see what Mr. Watt might have to say about the government of Ontario believing that it's such a long break.
So Doug Ford is shutting down Queen's Park for nearly 5 months, and I think I know why. Because every time he's asked a tough question lately, he crashes out, deflects, and never actually answers the question. Ontarians are struggling to find a nurse practitioner family doctor. Students are being buried in debt after Ford's OSAP cuts. Housing starts are falling. The cost of living keeps going up. And at the same time, it's scandal after scandal that keeps piling up under Ford. Here's just a few examples for you. The Ford government changed the Freedom of Information laws to hide records from the public, including the Premier's cell phone records. We learned that taxpayers were on the hook for a nearly $29 million private luxury jet before public outrage forced a reversal. This government called an early snap election, claiming it was about protecting Ontario, yet we barely sat at the legislature, and it sounds like they're really just here to protect Doug Ford. But who is protecting accountability? Because while Ontarians are looking for answers, Doug Ford is closing down Queen's Park until late October. The people of Ontario deserve a government willing to show up.
I have no idea what happened here, kids and cubs. You just saw it. The screen just shifted on me for come on, computer. I have no idea what's going on tonight. Okay, everything is going haywire at the moment. That was wow, that was wild. I have no idea why that happened at all. But to continue what Tyler was saying here, hold on, I'll just try to bring it back to where it was, and then I will bring that to you. Okay, let me see if I can bring it up at this part here. I'm so sorry, I don't know what happened. All the screens sort of decided that they were going to reset and reboot. And we'll cut off Mr. Watt in the middle of the sentence. So let's bring it back to where it was.
And it sounds like they're really just here to protect Doug Ford. But who is protecting accountability? Because while Ontarians are looking for answers, Doug Ford is closing down Queen's Park until late October. The people of Ontario deserve a government that's willing to show up, answer questions, and be held accountable for its decisions. But apparently, that's too much to ask. So Doug Ford
So
is
there you
shutting
go.
down
That too is a bad idea because I don't think that this time this is going to work out for Doug Ford taking this long a break. 21 weeks the legislature is going to be closed. Absolutely insane. Then we got one more thing with him that's clearly a bad idea. Doug Ford that says that he's all for Canada. Doesn't seem that might be exactly the case here. Hopefully I can get this article out from behind paywall. Yes, there we go. According to Laura Stone of the Globe and Mail, Doug Ford is set to host a business reception alongside American billionaire Ross Perot Jr. in Washington in early June, part of the Ontario Premier's renewed efforts to push for stronger economic ties between Canada and the United States at a critical juncture in trade negotiations. The reception, scheduled for June 8, will cater to a U.S. business crowd, Mr. Ford's office said. The Premier is also expected to meet with business leaders from the auto, aerospace, and agriculture industries during the two-day trip on June 8th and 9th, as well as with U.S. senators and members of Congress. Mr. Perot Jr., a real estate developer, and son of the former presidential candidate of the same name, chairs the board of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, which bills itself as the world's largest business organization, representing more than 3 million American companies of all sizes. Mr. Perot Jr., who previously told the Globe and Mail that he considers U.S. President Donald Trump a friend, referred questions to the USCC. The chamber did not immediately respond to a request for comment. The trip to D.C. will be Mr. Ford's first since traveling there twice during the February 2025 provincial election campaign, which saw his progressive conservatives win a third majority. Mr. Ford and Mr. Perot Jr. struck up a friendship this year after meeting in April during the Premier's provincial trade mission to Texas. The two visited a private museum on the Perot family property dedicated to the late Ross Perot, an independent candidate who finished third in the 1992 race against Bill Clinton and George H.W. Bush with almost 19% of the vote. The elder Mr. Perot died in 2019. While in D.C., Mr. Ford is expected to launch an updated version of his Fortress Amcan, oh my God, he hasn't let that go, pitch, which will now be labeled Fortress North America. Well, at least that's a little better. Focusing on the economic partnerships with shared security between Canada, the U.S., and Mexico. While Mr. Ford has previously mused about cutting Mexico out of the deal, he is revising his vision to include integrating all three economies. Quote, as part of his long-standing efforts to make the case against American tariffs and protectionism, Premier Ford will be traveling to Washington for 2 days, during which time he'll meet with elected officials and business leaders to launch Fortress North America, Mr. Ford's spokesperson Hannah Jensen said in a statement. Prime Minister Mark Carney echoed the sentiment last week during an Economic Club of New York speech talking about more cooperation inside a Fortress North America on industries that are currently subject to hefty U.S. tariffs, including automobiles, steel, and aluminium. The Prime Minister also called for a new partnership between Canada and the U.S. Quote, Canada Strong will help make America great again, Mr. Carney said. Now, again, want to remind you that that sentence is not Canada will help make America great again, but Canada Strong will help make America great again. In other words, Canada pursuing the agenda that Mark Carney presented to us, which is to diversify, to move a little bit away from the United States, to become much more independent and much more self-reliant. Doing that will help make America great again. We don't actually care about making America great again. But hey, if that's going to work, if that's going to work to sell it, especially as we're trying to get on board with Kuzma, why not? The tonal change is fine so long as we don't change our plan. Mr. Ford's Washington visit is taking place at a critical time. The formal review date for the United States-Mexico-Canada trade agreement is less than 5 weeks away, and talks between Ottawa and Washington have effectively stalled because the United States walked away from the table after Mr. Ford had another bad idea of trying to antagonize and taunt the President of the United States by presenting a commercial of what Ronald Reagan, who is revered in Republican circles, still for some reason, had to say about tariffs back in the day. Well, Donald Trump got his little fifis hurt on that. And after saying that originally that he would have done the same thing too, a couple of days later came along, and it seems that whatever negotiation progress that Mark Carney had done, and it looked like there was going to be some reliefs on some of those sectoral tariffs, that Doug Ford essentially blew out of the water. Just like Danielle Smith is trying to blow that pipeline out of the water now with talk of separation in that referendum. Why can't conservative premiers just stick to the plan and follow a lead? So annoying. U.S. negotiators met their counterparts in Mexico City last week for a first round of USMCA negotiations, notably without Canada at the table. The countries have scheduled 2 more rounds of bilateral talks over the next month. Mr. Ford called Canada's absence from the table concerning. It is not. It is not. We have some things that we need to resolve with the United States. Mark Carney describes it as something like 30 points. Mexico has something about like 60, and Mexico has a whole bunch of other issues with regard to, for example, drugs and immigration and stuff that we just do not have. There's no need for us to be at the table at the moment for this type of stuff. The 3 countries must meet on July 1st to decide whether to extend the agreement for 16 years or move to a period of annual reviews for 10 years, after which the deal will expire if no extension is reached. Any of the parties can withdraw from the treaty with 6 months' notice. Mr. Ford is also set to visit South Carolina at the end of June and Utah in early July to attend conferences with other premiers and meet with governors. No wonder he wanted a luxury plane. Mr. Ford, who last year spearheaded a group representing Canada's premiers, cast himself as Captain Canada figure while the federal Liberals were plunged into disarray after then Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's resignation. He won a 3rd majority last year under the slogan Protect Ontario, which he has not done, which earned him praise in some circles for standing up to Mr. Trump, but was viewed by others as overstepping his bounds by interfering in federal matters. Yes, indeed, that is the case. Doug Ford just a whole bunch of terrible ideas of late. The Ross this one here, I can see it sort of working in conjunction with what the Prime Minister is trying to do here. Just, my God, could there be a better person than Ross Perot Jr. considers himself a friend of Donald Trump. That would just, I guess we don't have the choice of that. But it's just, I'm having trouble buying Doug Ford as a Captain Canada figure more and more. With regard to the ongoing CUSMA negotiations, Mike Crawley of CBC News has written today that Canada has given the U.S. and Mexico official notice that it wants the free trade deal between the three countries to be renewed. In a letter to his American and Mexican counterparts, Canada-U.S. Trade Minister Dominic LeBlanc said the country is seeking a renewal of CUSMA when it comes up for review on July 1st. LeBlanc traveled to Washington on Tuesday with Canada's chief negotiator Janice Charette to meet U.S. Trade Representative Jameson Greer, a member of President Donald Trump's cabinet. During a post-meeting news conference at the Canadian Embassy, LeBlanc said he presented Greer with proposals that respond to what he called, quote, long-standing issues that the United States has raised with us, but declined to reveal any specifics. Quote, the road to conclusions in these conversations is sometimes not a straight line. You can suddenly hit a clear air turbulence when you don't expect it. Sometimes you can have a smooth ride with no turbulence, so I remain optimistic that we'll focus on the latter. Greer's office made no public statements about the substance of the meeting with LeBlanc. High on the agenda for Canada in the CUSMA talks is getting relief from Trump's tariffs, which Prime Minister Mark Carney has characterized as a violation of the trade agreement. Greer has repeatedly said, including just last week, that tariffs are a new reality that Canada is going to have to live with. And an uncooperative Canada is a new reality that you are going to have to live with, Mr. Greer. It's a two-way street. All the signals from the White House over the past year and a half indicate that the Trump administration does not want a straightforward renewal of CUSMA and instead wants significant changes to its terms, including on automotive exports and access to Canada's dairy market. The Trump administration wants the agreement amended to require that a minimum of 50% of vehicle content must be made in the U.S. to qualify for tariff-free access to the American market, according to a report in the Wall Street Journal. In the letter, LeBlanc calls CUSMA, quote, highly beneficial to each of our countries and to the integrated North American economy, but goes on to acknowledge that the other countries may want to, quote, propose improvements. Canada, quote, is willing to consider any proposal that can be beneficial to all three nations' long-term prosperity. LeBlanc's meeting with Greer on Tuesday is only the second time the pair have met face-to-face since October, when Trump scrapped talks with Canada. Meanwhile, the U.S. held 2 days of formal bilateral talks on CUSMA with Mexico last week and has scheduled 2 further rounds of negotiations in June and July. Mexico's Economy Secretary Marcelo Ebrard also called for renewal of CUSMA in a letter to Greer and LeBlanc made public on Tuesday. Carney is downplaying the significance of Mexico being ahead of Canada in its talks with the U.S. on the trade deal. He told reporters on Parliament Hill Tuesday that the U.S. has almost 60 issues with Mexico related to CUSMA, roughly double the number it has with Canada. Carney said the U.S. tariffs on Canadian steel, aluminium, automobiles, and forest products are a fundamental issue between the two countries. Quote, we're looking to determine whether there's a possibility of a new partnership there, Carney said, echoing his comments to a business audience in New York last week. The CUSMA talks come with Carney signaling a bit of shift in Canada's approach to the U.S. on trade. He's now speaking about cooperating in economic sectors threatened by global competition, a proposal aligned with Ontario Premier Doug Ford's call for Fortress North America. It's anything but clear that Trump sees things that way. After rarely mentioning Canada over the past few months, he trolled the country on social media Monday night. As you can tell, 51st state, he wrote in a post citing a news article about the Canadian economy hitting a technical recession defined as 2 consecutive quarters of negative growth, GDP growth. And then, of course, Ambassador Doucheface followed suit. David Patterson, Ontario's representative in Washington, D.C., said the trolling is typical of the kind of gamesmanship that many countries have faced from Trump. Quote, I don't think we should get too upset about those things, Patterson told CBC News Network on Tuesday. It doesn't help us to do the job, which is to solve issues, and there are real issues that have to be discussed. CUSMA covers roughly $1.3 trillion in annual Canada-U.S. trade goods and services and currently shields a large swath of Canadian exports from Trump's tariffs. Under the text of the agreement, the three countries must state by July 1st, 6 years after the deal took effect, whether they want to renew it or renegotiate it. Whatever happens on July 1st, CUSMA is slated to remain in effect until 2036. However, any country can withdraw from it at any time with 6 months' notice. Trump signed CUSMA in his first term and at the time held it as the most significant trade deal in history. This term, he has floated the idea of walking away from it. However, major U.S. businesses and agriculture groups have almost universally urged the White House to renew the agreement, leading experts to question whether Trump's withdrawal threat is merely a negotiating tactic. Brian Clough, who advised former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau on Canada-US relations, says the Carney government should not approach the talks thinking it must get a deal at any cost. Quote, the notion that Trump will actually fully withdraw from the CUSMA deal, I think, is very unlikely. It would cause so much damage to the U.S. economy, Clough told CBC News Network on Monday. So we'll see what happens with that. Get some cubs, but that's a lot of stuff going on for Mr. Ford. In addition to what's been going on in Ontario with Doug Ford, there's a couple of other news for you. Oh my God, I'm having a lot of difficulty tonight. There was two big moments of gaslighting today from other parties. The first one came from former interim leader of the NDP, Don Davies, who is presenting a bill, I believe. I believe it is a bill to ban floor crossing without constituents' consent, according to Catherine Tunney. NDP MP Don Davies says he'll introduce a bill to ban MPs from crossing the floor without first getting the support of voters in an attempt to clamp down on the type of defections that have bolstered Prime Minister Mark Carney's benches in recent months and helped the Liberals secure a majority. In a brief statement on Monday, Davies, the party's parliamentary leader, said his proposed bill would require members of parliament who wish to join another party to first obtain consent from their constituents through a by-election or sit as an independent until the next general election. While opposition MPs' legislation known as private members' bills rarely pass, they can draw attention to issues. Davies sits at number 236 in the private member bill draw, meaning it won't be debated anytime soon. He's scheduled to talk more about his proposed legislation on Tuesday as Parliament enters the final push before summer break. It's been an extraordinary sitting that saw 4 Conservative MPs and 1 former NDP MP join Carney's caucus. Floor crossing is a political practice as old as Confederation, with both Liberals and Conservatives taking part, but polls suggest Canadians have a mixed view when politicians switch parties between elections. Last week, NDP leader Avi Lewis backed the party's long-held stance against floor crossing. Quote, we believe in the democratic will of the people, so if you want to change parties, that's no problem. You resign, you run in a by-election, and you run for another party, he said, responding to a question about whether he would invite Stephen Guilbeault to join the party. The longtime environmentalist announced Wednesday he would resign as a Liberal MP this summer. Quote, we have a number of by-elections coming up. He would be welcome if he resigned from the Liberal Party to seek the nomination as an NDP candidate in any of the ridings across the country, said Lewis. But floor crossing is not what we do. That's what the Liberals do. This is not Davies' first attempt at amending the Parliament of Canada Act to force floor crossers to seek re-election under their new party's banner. Previous attempts have failed to become law. Conservative MPs in the past have voted against that legislation. During an April news conference, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre was asked if he would vote differently now. He said that would be a decision for caucus. Such brave leadership. The Conservative leader has said he personally supports recall petitions, a way for constituents to remove a representative if they garner enough local support. He supports recall positions to override the will of constituents. But floor crossing, however, interesting. When a member of parliament goes back on the word they made to their constituents and switches parties, constituents should be able to petition to throw them out and have a by-election, he said at the time. Okay, this is gaslighting because this completely violates the principle of Chesterton's fence. And Chesterton's fence is a principle that states that before you seek to change a law, alter it, all that kind of stuff, you first need to understand why that fence was put up in the first place. Floor crossing is not undemocratic. It is an inherent part of the Westminster parliamentary system. It exists for a reason. Because under the Westminster parliamentary system, we elect a representative. The seat in the legislature does not belong to political parties, which are private organizations that are pretty and relatively unaccountable to the general public. And they don't do very well on accountability to even to their own members, to be totally honest, as we just saw with the Ontario Liberal Party in Scarborough Southwest. Political parties already have enough power. The seat in the legislature belongs to you, the constituent. You vote for an MP to represent you. Yes, the constituents sometimes, often, most often, presents themselves under the banner of a political party, but there are people that run as independents. But they run under the banner of a political party because it's easy, it's convenient. There are some shared costs. But the seat does not belong to the party. We do not vote for the party. Now, a lot of people come around and says, yeah, but most people vote for the party, which is your right. You're allowed to vote according to any criteria you want. It's a free country. Nobody's going to stop you. There's no law against that. But however you choose to vote under our system, the vote is counted as a vote for the candidate, not the party. So, what this is from Don Davies is an attempt at a power grab from political parties. It's political parties trying to take the power away from you, the constituent, and appropriate it for itself. An MP is elected to represent you to the party, not the party to you. If the party, for some other reason, strays from itself and starts to do wrong by electors or starts to be abusive to the MPs themselves, which was probably very much the case for the 4 conservative MPs who crossed the floor. That MP has a right to change which party they represent. They can sit as independent or move to another party if they think your interests are going to be better served by doing that, which was the case for Lori Idlout. People in her riding were asking her to make that change so she could be at the table. Don Davies is hoping that you do not understand why that fence was put up in the first place, why it is in the first place. The system was designed with political parties not being able to interfere with floor crossing. The seat belongs to you. Don Davies wants the seat to belong to the party. That should never, ever, 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 ever be allowed to happen. We're being gaslighted. The other element of gaslighting that we have been having came from the benches of the Bloc Québécois. Christine Normandin, who we've seen on the show a couple times, is also presenting, I'm guessing it would be a private member's bill. Excuse me, I have to cough for a second. I will be right back with you. There we go. Little beaver moisture. A bill that has he's 1 point, 1 clause, single clause bill. The Clarity Act is abrogated. Period. And then proceeded to having a whole whack of gaslighting. And I'm probably going to have to. The press conference is that he gave is primarily in French. So I don't want to do show him and do simultaneous translation all the way through. So here is his basic points here is that he says that the rules of democracy they say that it's 50% plus 1. Right? And he says that the best proof of this is that in 1995, nobody contested that result when the government won by fewer than 1% in that referendum. Now, of course, at the time, the Clarity Act did not exist. Right? So the yes camp lost the referendum. He says the Federalists, of course, because everything now needs to be framed in terms of oppression. So he says that despite an attitude of provocation from the Prime Minister of the day, so the Federalists got scared. So now we're going to change the rules of the game, and we're going to redefine the rules of the game And now he's saying, now it will be a foreign parliament. The jurisdiction. So saying that this is going to go to a foreign government to determine what is a clear question. The government of Canada is not a foreign government to the government of Quebec. Quebec is still a part of Canada at the moment. Right? And you got to keep this in mind, because he has a really interesting way of seeing what happens, because he says from the moment that a yes vote in Quebec gets 50% plus one, the Canadian Parliament no longer has jurisdiction on the affairs of the Quebec Parliament unless the Quebec Parliament decides otherwise. And he says that the same principle applies in Alberta. This is not true. And he says the government of Quebec responded to the Clarity Act with Bill 99, which was tabled by Joseph Facal, a particularly odious member of the Quebec National Assembly at the time, that reestablished that what has been said by the courts, that in terms of when it applies to democracy in Quebec. He says, but the government of Canada recently said, no, the boss is me. You are like a colony, which the Prime Minister made no comment of the sort. You are a colony that decided to embrace Canada back when he made that speech about the Plains of Abraham, and that's not what the Prime Minister said at all. So he says, we have simply decided to reestablish the thing, the way things that the way that they should be. And now, here's the thing. When there is a vote that becomes 50% plus one for yes, Yves-François Blanchet is stating as a fact what he wishes to be true. He's wish casting here, saying that the government of Canada no longer has any authority. That is not true, because a referendum vote like this is not a unilateral declaration of separation. That alone is not enough. The laws of Canada do not stop applying to the province of Quebec or to the province of Alberta, should they decide later on, because the Alberta referendum is not on this. But that it doesn't end. That's not one and done, right? The province of Quebec is not the only one that gets a say on this. They get a say for themselves on what it is that they wish to vote for. But that's not where the process ends. So, it's not the vote that leads to the secession. The secession is not instant, according to Darren Major of CBC News. With the possibility of two separation referendums on the horizon, Canadians could be forgiven for wondering what would happen if voters of one province or another decide they no longer want to be a part of Canada. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith has pledged that her province would hold a referendum in the fall, essentially asking if voters want a second binding referendum on a separation at a later date. In Quebec, Parti québécois leader Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon, who could be premier after October's election, has promised a secession referendum in his province during the first mandate. While Post suggests the secession vote wouldn't prevail in either Alberta or Quebec, the process by which a province could withdraw from Canada was laid out in federal law nearly 3 decades ago. In the wake of the 1995 Quebec separation vote, the federal government asked the Supreme Court to weigh in on the question of a province pulling out of the federation. The court issued its ruling in 1998, and Parliament followed up by passing the Clarity Act, which put that ruling into law. Yves-François Blanchet is pretending that that decision did not come down when he's making these statements. Here's a breakdown of what the Supreme Court has ruled and what it laid out in the Clarity Act, and it does apply to Quebec. Both the Supreme Court's ruling and the Act state that a province could negotiate terms of separation if voters were presented with a clear question, which was not the case in 1995 in the example that Yves-François Blanchet mentioned. If you remember, I read the question from 1995. We'll read it again because it was a question that and 45 words. Do you agree that Quebec should become sovereign after having made a formal offer to Canada for a new economic and political partnership within the scope of the bill respecting the future of Quebec and of the agreement signed on June 12, 1995? I'm sorry, that is not a clear question. Just like Danielle Smith's question for Alberta, also not clear. Because here we mentioned, of course, in the Quebec state, there's nothing in this question that states that the offer has to be made in good faith, and it also assumes that everybody that votes clearly understands the two conditions that were there, and everything about those bills and all of that kind of stuff, which is not a given. In the Alberta referendum, the wording of it, as we've indicated on the show, right, talks about a process under the Constitution to initiate separation for binding referendum. Question: should Alberta remain a province of Canada, or should the government of Alberta commence the legal process required under the Canadian Constitution to hold a binding provincial referendum on whether or not Alberta should separate from Canada? First of all, under the Westminster parliamentary system, there is no such thing as a binding referendum, and there is no such thing as a legal process required under the Canadian Constitution to hold a binding provincial referendum. That what Albertans are being asked to vote on is something that does not exist. It is not a clear question. Now, Mark Carney did say that this question would have to, see if it meets the Clarity Act, but it was determined that the Clarity Act did not apply, not because the question is good, but because the result of this referendum in Alberta does not directly lead to something that is affecting the Constitution. When you stay in Canada, nothing changes, it's status quo, or you have a referendum to have another referendum, by what time everything about the duty to consult will reapply there, and that question would be subject to the Clarity Act. And if it's this type of question, again, right, if we have another referendum and it's the same question, should the government of Alberta commence the legal process required under the Canadian Constitution to hold a binding provincial, it wouldn't be that. Should the government of Alberta, or basically should Alberta separate from Canada on that one? That one still wouldn't be binding because there's no such thing, but that would be a clear question. Now, if it's asked, should the government of Alberta commence the legal process under the Canadian Constitution to separate from Canada? Well, that would be an invalid question under the Clarity Act because there is no such thing. Right? So it's we're being gaslit. It matches so basically, we can't, separation is not that easy. It's not, you vote, it's 50% plus one, and whoops, all the laws in Canada stop applying immediately, and only laws of Quebec start applying. This is what Yves-François Blanchet is trying to make us believe. It is pure gaslighting. Both the Supreme Court's ruling and the Act state that a province could negotiate terms of separation if voters were presented with a clear question on a separation and a clear majority votes in favor of leaving Canada. But both the court and the Act say a province can't just leave on its own. Rather, the provincial and federal governments would have to negotiate with the provinces that's trying to leave. And here's the other thing in Canada that doesn't help the separatist cause, because we've had referendum in the past about changing the way that we vote. Right? There have been referendum in Canada on proportional representation. And you remember that many of those referenda didn't require 50%, but required more, and then required a certain percentage in every riding. See if I can find that for you. See if we can find the vote criteria here. Just take a look here. No. Not that, not how to win that way. I didn't formulate my question properly. Let's try that again. If the computer will cooperate with me, and it seems not to want to. But let's say, I believe, if I remember correctly, it was 60%. It had to get something like 60% in overall, and then in 60% of the ridings had to vote for it as well, or something of the sort. But the threshold for just changing the way that we vote was higher than 50% plus one. So a vote on actually breaking up Canada, one could assume, would require at least that much, if not more. I think the referendum was on BC, was in BC, if I remember correctly. There we go. Let's take a look at that. Let's see if I can find the rules in it. Ballot structure and detail. There we go. Is that it? No. I wish I could remember the number off the back of my hand, but I can't. Oh, that's a shame, because I would like to be able to give you an exact number here. Let's see if I can maybe bring it up this way. Yeah, it's amazing. You know, that's kind of one of the most important things about about it, and it doesn't state how it would be determined if it passes. Oh well, hopefully I'll be able to find it another point and then bring it to you. But it was definitely more than just 50% plus one to do that. So Mr. Blanchet and Ms. Normandin are absolutely wrong on the facts here. Maybe there's another one here. And it's really funny because after the vote failed in with regard to proportional representation, there too, there was an all-party special committee that came about and presented 36 recommendations that should be followed or adopted when if the question should come again. So the vote in 2025 needed a 60% threshold to pass. Yes, it's written in this article, finally, and it got 57.7%. And I'm not sure if it required that in a certain number of ridings as well. But yeah, so if it's 60% to change from voting from first past the post to for proportional representation, and we've already acted on that, clearly one could make the case that it should be at least 60% to separate. So what Monsieur Blanchet says here, that the rules of democracy always say that it's only 50% plus one. No, that is not actually true. And in fact, again, in certain countries, this type of stuff is outright illegal. In Spain, for example, Catalonia attempted it at one point, and the government of Spain shut that down pretty quickly. In 2017, the Catalan government held an independence referendum on October 1st, 2017, which was suspended by the Constitutional Court of Spain and ruled a breach of the Constitution. Following the vote and the subsequent unilateral declaration of independence by the Catalan parliament, several separatist leaders were jailed for sedition and misuse of public funds. These leaders were eventually pardoned by the Spanish government in 2021. To resolve years of political conflict, the Spanish Congress approved a controversial amnesty law for Catalan separatists involved in the 2014 and 2017 separatist drives. While the Catalan independence movement continues to pursue self-determination through regional elections and political negotiation, any formal separation would require a legal amendment to the national constitution. There's no reason to suggest that that wouldn't be the case here as well. So Monsieur Blanchet is factually incorrect and very much gaslighting. That all is required is 50% plus one, and that once a vote receives that in Quebec, that all laws, Canada no longer has any jurisdiction whatsoever, and whatever it says no longer applies. No. That's not how it works. So this is the reason, because if that was the case, there would be no reason for Monsieur Blanchet to try to get rid of the Clarity Act, and there would have been no reason for Quebec to pass Bill 99, which it claims counter the Clarity Act, but it doesn't, because provincial law on matters of constitutional affairs do not supersede federal law. They just do not. So, two bad ideas that will not go far, presented by two parties who are attempting to gaslight us. And the only reason this has come along is because Alberta did what he did what they did, and Mark Carney said, it's my duty as Prime Minister to be sure that to see that whether or not the Clarity Act applies here or not, which set Quebec off. And this is what's happening. This is the danger of this thing, right? Whatever the Prime Minister does or says for Alberta, then Quebec can choose to take offense of it and use it for their upcoming provincial election to try to get the Parti Québécois in power. Right now, public opinion polling is indicating that if there was an election today, the Parti Québécois would get exactly 64 seats, which is exactly what they need for a majority. So, yeah, not fantastic. Might explain why the Prime Minister was with Premier Christine Frichette right now, announcing that there was a lot of money on hand for public transit and things of the like. Because the Prime Minister is hoping that if Christine Frichette could develop a little more popularity, that would result in the Parti Québécois having less opportunities to win that majority. But it seems that today, and we'll present that in the show tomorrow, that Ottawa and Quebec have reached an agreement on how new federal public transit investments will be allocated. So that allows Christine Frichette again to say that she has managed to pick up a deal. Right now, the CAQ, since she became the interim leader, has moved from getting 0 seats in the upcoming election to the possibility of 9, which has dropped affected the Liberals more than the Parti Québécois at the moment in terms of votes, because right now it was looking like the Parti Québécois could potentially finish second to the Liberals if the Quebec Coalition Avenir Quebec gets more strength. That might make it easier at first from the Parti Québécois to win if they're taking votes from the Liberals. But eventually, if they start taking votes from the Parti Québécois as well, it might increase the odds of a minority parliament in this case. So lots of things to look about there. But it makes it such that the Prime Minister's hands are somewhat tied a little bit because he knows that whatever he says in Alberta will be pounced on in Quebec. Whatever he says to Quebec will be pounced on for Alberta. But yeah, two ideas there. What else do we have for you tonight, kids and cubs? Trying to see, look at my episode description here. Let's see if I've got more. I believe I said I had something about submarine purchases, I think. Take a look. So Doug Ford, yes. Oh, yes. News from the world of soccer and cricket. Team Canada, the World Cup is coming soon, and Team Canada is trying to move ahead with its roster. And there had been an announcement last week that the roster for Canada, I'm not sure if it's the final roster or at least a preliminary roster, and there'll perhaps be some things coming on afterwards. But 4 days ago, Canada unveiled their FIFA World Cup roster. This is by Brian Aguilar of CTV News Toronto. It says that Alphonso Davies will lead Canada into the 2026 FIFA World Cup as the men's roster was revealed last Friday. Canada will kick off the tournament against Bosnia and Herzegovina in Toronto on June 12th. Head coach Jesse March said earlier this week that Davies, who is recovering from a hamstring injury, will likely miss the opening match. Who will don the red and white. We have forwards: Promise David of Brampton, Ontario; Tammy Oluwaseyi from Mississauga, Ontario; Kyle Lauren from Brampton, Ontario; and Jonathan David from Ottawa. Defenders, we have Joel Waterman from Aldergrove, BC; Moise Bombito from Montreal, Quebec; Alfie Jones from Hillcrest, Alberta; Derek Cornelius from Ajax, Ontario; Richie Laria from Toronto, Ontario; Alfonso Davies from Edmonton, Alberta; Alistair Johnston from Aurora, Ontario; Nico Sigur from Burnaby, BC; and Luc de Fougerolles from Montreal, Quebec. In the midfielders position, we have William Miller from Brampton, Ontario; Ismaël Koné from Montreal, Quebec; Stéphane Eustachio from Leamington, Ontario; Jacob Schaffelberg from Port Williams, Nova Scotia; Jonathan Osorio from Brampton, Ontario; Tajan Buchanan from Brampton, Ontario; Ali Ahmed from Toronto, Ontario; Marcelo Flores from Georgetown, Ontario, which it seems might be a scratch due to an injury recently suffered; Nathan Saliba from Longueuil, Quebec; Matthew Chouanière from Saint-Alexandre, Quebec; and the goalkeepers, Maxime Crépeau from Candiac, Quebec; Dane St. Clair from Pickering, Ontario; and Owen Goodman from Allison, Ontario. 12 hours ago, when it comes to Flores, here it says race for the roster. Who replaces him on the Canadian roster? So I'm guessing he is completely out. Team Canada was scheduled to play 2 games in the lead-up. The first one was against Uzbekistan, which was played on Monday night. Canada won it 2-0, which was good because Canada hadn't scored some goals in regular time play for a while now. So those 2 goals were encouraging, and it seems that winger Marcelo Flores has ruptured his ACL during, I guess it wasn't during this match, but during his regular team, I guess. He plays with the Tigres, and they lost to Toluca. I'm guessing that he probably plays in the European League, and this was a season match here. But he definitely tore his ACL, so he will need to be replaced. So yeah. So let's see what we have here. Is somebody put in replacing him? I don't know what name they've put in here. Yeah, I can't tell who they've. I don't know if they've chosen someone yet here, but that win against Uzbekistan was definitely very important, and I believe their next match. Can't remember who the next match is against. That's very strange. In the very, very interesting. Hold on, the computer's just doing a couple of weird things, so I'm just waiting for it to settle, kits and cubs. And hopefully, there we go. That's settled a little bit. Okay, let's see if I can get some additional information here. I'm so sorry, kits and cubs. As I started the show, the computer started to act a little strange. Let's see if I can get this fixed up here. There you go. So yeah, in the match against Uzbekistan, this is from John Molinaro of Sportsnet. First half wasn't all that great for Canada. In fact, it looked like the Uzbeks were dominating the match, and then there's some changes made in the second half, and Team Canada kind of got its momentum going. Canada sits 30th in the FIFA World Rankings, 20 spots above Uzbekistan, which will make its World Cup debut this summer. The visitors carried the bulk of the play and looked far more dangerous in the first half, as evidenced by their 9-3 edge in total shots. And it seems that if it wasn't for the lack of finishing from Uzbekistan, they could have gone into halftime with a 2-0 lead. It says that Canada looked timid and erratic before the break. And then Jesse March made some changes, bringing 7 players off the bench at the start of the second half, including both eventual goal scorers, Osorio and Nelson, as well as Tani Oluwaseyi, who set up both goals. And David Promise also did very well. He didn't score, but he got into dangerous scoring positions a few times there. So that is very important. It says here, quote, "My focus is less on evaluating individuals and making sure that everybody understands the rules and understands the kind of behaviors we want and that we're clear with exactly what the game needs to look like," Marsh said. And so for the most part, I thought we executed that, but there's still little things in there that we can tighten up, and we will. Nelson and Oluwase looked especially lively after being subbed on the start of the second half, and it was the latter who played a role in Osorio's opening goal. So there we go. Some good stuff here. And it says here that the goals were Canada's first from open play in 3 games in 2026. Both goals in a 2-2 draw with Iceland in Toronto on March 28th were scored by Jonathan David from the penalty spot, while Canada was held to a 0-0 draw versus Tunisia 3 days later. Before those matches, Canada hadn't scored from open play since Ismail Koni's first half strike in a 2-0 win last November versus Venezuela. And so this ended the team's overall goal drought at 342 consecutive minutes. So very, very important win here for Team Canada, and their final World Cup tune-up match will be Friday versus Ireland in Montreal. And it seems here that the coach is going to put Crépeau in the net, at least for the start. And he says, "We would like to make a decision about the goalkeeper this week. Once again, they both delivered really good performances, which is what I expected. And now I have to make a decision. So there's some responsibility on my shoulders. But again, I can't make the wrong decision because we have two really good goalkeepers that have delivered performance after performance for the national team, and both deserve to be the starter." So he's saying, telling people not to read too much into the fact that Crépeau will be starting, because I'm guessing that he wanted to give more people a chance here. So that is taking place, and there's also news when it comes to that. It would seem that for Canada, that of course there's going to be a bill that comes with hosting the World Cup of soccer matches, of course, and trying to see if I can find the article here. I saw it before I came on. Here from Pitch of CBC states that the 2026 World Cup will cost governments across Canada more than $1 billion, putting the cost per game at $82 million, according to a new report from the Parliamentary Budget Officer. The estimated $1.066 billion price tag to host games in Vancouver and Toronto will see the federal government cover $473 million, with the rest covered by other levels of government. In all, Canada is hosting 13 of the 104 games being placed across 13 of the 104 games being played across the three nations from June 11th to July 19th, with 7 to be played in Vancouver and 6 in Toronto. The bulk of the federal support is focused on infrastructure and security. Federal transfers to other levels of government for operations and infrastructure total $220 million, while $145 million is being transferred to other levels of government for security operations, with another $79 million going to the RCMP. The PBO referenced a recent report from the City of Toronto indicating that including federal financial support will cost taxpayers a total of $380 million to host its 6 games, while the 7 in Vancouver will cost about $578 million. The report also said that should costs in Vancouver and Toronto rise, any city-level hosting costs exceeding the grants provided by the federal government are expected to be paid for by other levels of government. While the PBO says the government's support of $82 million per game is roughly in line with what was spent per game on previous tournaments, Canada's costs are significantly lower than some recent tournaments. For example, the cost to governments in Russia per game for the 2018 World Cup was $109 million, while the Japanese and South Korean governments paid $112 million per game in 2002, and Brazil's World Cup in 2014 cost its taxpayers $125 million per game. In contrast, France paid just $22 million per game in 1988, and Germany were about $50 million in each in 2006. The PBO warns that its estimates for other World Cups, quote, should be interpreted as lower bound estimates because they only include organization and venue costs. Before releasing the fall budget, Prime Minister Mark Carney announced his intention to separate day-to-day operational spending from capital investments in all federal budgets going forward. Doing that, he said, will make it easier to see what is being borrowed to spend on the business of running the day-to-day operations of government and what is being borrowed to spend on buying or investing assets. The PBO said that it estimates the $128.1 million of the federal contribution could be classified as a capital expenditure, although it says that amount is not expected to be registered as a capital expenditure in the public accounts. The PBO says that about $126.1 million of that capital expenditure will go towards BMO Field in Toronto, BC Place in Vancouver, and other FIFA training sites in the country. So that's what's going on there. And then the world of cricket, some very strange things are happening. It seems that Cricket Canada has been suspended from the international ICC. What is International Cricket? I'm not sure what the second C means here. But apparently it was an unexpected suspension. Canada had qualified for a big tournament took place this year, World Cup, and it had been the first time in a while Canada emerged from it winless. But as you know, cricket is going to be an Olympic sport, I believe, in LA, and so Team Canada is trying to build itself up in order to qualify. But according to Stephen D'Souza, Roxana Woloshin, and Lisa Ellenwood of CBC News, after a series of controversies and allegations of corruption and financial mismanagement, the International Cricket Council, that's what it is, has suspended Cricket Canada's membership. The ICC cited the organization's, quote, serious breaches of its membership obligations in a statement on its website following a board meeting in Ahmedabad, India on Sunday. In May, the sport's Dubai-based international body froze Cricket Canada's funding and gave the organization 6 months to get its house in order. At that time, an ICC letter said the organization lacked adequate governance systems and hadn't filed audited financial statements. The ICC is not a body that does this readily, so clearly they've been worried about something for a while, said Osman Samiuddin, chief editor of ESPN Cricinfo. He says the ICC has taken this step in the past with other national organizations, including last year with Cricket USA. In that case, the ICC put the American Cricket Organization on notice before eventually taking over management in the fall of 2025. Cricket Canada receives most of its funding from the ICC. In its 2024 financial report, on which an auditor had not signed off, the organization said the ICC had given it just over $3.6 million, or 63% of that year's revenue. The financial suspension shows that they've clearly lost any faith that they had in Cricket Canada's ability to manage finances in a non-corrupt and transparent way, Samudin said. In a statement emailed to the Fifth Estate, Cricket Canada's new interim chief operating officer, Bhavijit Johar, wrote that ICC suspension was, quote, unexpected, but that Cricket Canada respects the ICC's decision and remains fully committed to meeting all compliance agreements. The move follows a Fifth Estate investigation published in April that revealed broader allegations of corruption, financial mismanagement, and attempts to fix parts of matches by major figures at Cricket Canada. Those accused deny the allegations. The reporting also revealed that the ICC's anti-corruption unit was investigating national men's team captain Dilpreet Bajwa for alleged match fixing in an incident in Canada's game against New Zealand in the recent men's T20 Cricket World Cup in Chennai, India, in February. Bajwa did not respond to CBC's request for comment at the time. Cricket Canada's suspension comes less than a month after a new board was elected, as well as a new president and vice president, and the appointment of Johar as interim COO, as chief operating officer. Johar said the irregularities identified by the ICC stem from actions and systemic weaknesses under the previous boards and management. To resolve that, Johar said Cricket Canada has tapped lawyer and former Pan American athlete Dasha Pedagudova to lead an independent committee to examine issues with governance and financial controls. He says the committee will have full access to Cricket Canada's finances and can interview staff and board members, with a report coming in 45 days. Other members of the committee include Devesh Shankar, an independent cricket journalist, and Henry Gruwell, a chartered professional accountant. The ICC said Monday that Canada's national teams can continue to participate in ICC events during the suspension. However, funding for those programs will only be accessible under ICC oversight. That means there should be no impact to the national men's team when they play the US and the Netherlands in a Cricket World Cup qualifying tournament in King City, Ontario, beginning Saturday. Cricket Canada will be required to meet a set of conditions, including addressing governance and administrative issues, in order to be considered for reinstatement, but so far no timeline or details of those conditions have been announced. However, Cricket Canada says it will continue to deliver non-national team programs as scheduled. That comes as welcome news to players and former players like Derek Pereira, who trains young players and runs the Ontario Cricket Academy. He says many have been asking him about the recent turmoil around Cricket Canada, and now the suspension will affect development programs and tournaments like the Under-19 qualifiers. As a cricketer, you go through many ups and downs, and a lot of it is in your control, but this is completely out of their control, said Pereira, who played for the national team in the late 90s. It does put a lot of questions in their mind, and they should really just be concentrating on the next game or next training session. Pereira says Cricket Canada's problems have made the country a laughingstock among other cricket-playing nations, and he's optimistic that ICC control will help turn things around. I think the ICC can bring some professionalism, some organization, some direction, and at least to get us up on our feet, we can at least make some steps forward. There's some amazing cricketers here in Canada that deserve better. So, according to The Guardian, which goes a little bit more in depth here, it says that the suspension comes amid growing concerns that one of Canada's fastest growing sports is being influenced by members of a notorious gang that operates with impunity from an Indian prison cell. Wow. Okay. That is something. Let's see what else. In recent months, Canada's governing body has been the subject of explosive allegations from the Fifth Estate, CBC's investigative unit. The show said its wide-ranging investigation found corruption, coercion, evidence of match fixing, and other misconduct within Cricket Canada. In one instance, the national outlet flagged questionable promotions within the ranks of players and accusations from senior staff that members at the top of the organization were ordering elements of matches to be fixed. One member of the national team told CBC that certain players were meant to rise quickly through the ranks, including to the level of captain. Players received threats that they could be killed if they didn't cooperate. Holy crap. Because sports betting has grown increasingly sophisticated and the amounts staked have grown so much, gamblers can bet money on possible errors in batting orders. After the team's captain made an error in the opening part of a game against New Zealand in February, he was questioned by the ICC's anti-corruption unit for alleged match fixing. Reporting also suggests that allegations of corruption are tied to the Lawrence Bishnoi gang, a transnational syndicate run from a Delhi prison cell. Bishnoi has been linked to a number of killings and attempted assassinations in Canada. Police suspect members of the Bishnoi gang could be responsible for the murder of Hardeep Singh Nijjar, a Sikh activist shot dead outside his temple in British Columbia. Bishnoi also ordered the killing of Sidhu Moose Wala, a Punjabi rapper with an international following, who was shot dead near his village in Punjab. Canada's federal government recently designated the gang as a terrorist entity. Federal officials said the organization uses murder, shootings, and arson to extort and intimidate diaspora communities and has alleged links to India's ruling government. Dang. Wow. That's okay. That's way darker than I thought it was. It's not just match fixing. Wow. I did not think I would be talking about cricket gangs because I had only seen the article from the CBC when I put this on the list. But when I brought it up, I saw the Guardian one, and I thought, "Ooh, this one deserves to be looked into." I'm glad I did. I had no idea that was going on. We actually tried to get interviews with someone from Cricket Canada when Canada was about to play at the T20 in February. They had indicated interest, but the tournament was going on at the time, and it seems that it's a rather sparsely staffed organization, so nobody was able to follow through. But we will indeed, of course, continue trying to get someone over here because, again, it's going to be included in the Olympics, and we do have a national team, and the team at least was good enough to make it to that World Cup tournament, where it was a very lengthy qualification process for Canada just to earn the spot, which indicates that Canada is progressing as a nation and might have a chance to be represented at the Olympics there. But yeah, definitely. We'll be trying to get more information, hopefully someone from Cricket Canada to come on the show. I wanted to do it mainly so that someone can come on and explain the game to those of us who are not familiar with it, and why it is it's important, and what Canada's development program is like and all that kind of stuff. But now there's a couple of extra things to talk about, which is really interesting. Okay, Kits and Cubs, I know I had a couple of other things in the episode. We'll save them for tomorrow morning because it's past 11 p.m. here where I am. So I will say that is the end of this episode of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. Nights. We hope that you enjoyed this because we loved making this for you. Remember, sharing is caring and word of mouth is priceless. So please tell your peeps and poops all about us. We really appreciate it when you do. Of course, share the content because the throttling is still going on. So again, please get our content in front of as many eyeballs as you can. That would definitely be very good. And I see that we have some kits here that I've not seen before. I see a Kit Rob here chatting here saying, we need to bring governance to a Canadian prison cell. The game of cricket has changed. Indeed. Thank you for joining us this evening. It's nice to have you among us. Really nice. And Kit Cassie had a chance to pop in. Unique Jillian as well. I tried to keep the show going a little longer because I saw your thing saying that if we were still going after 10, that you would be able to pop in. So yeah, there we go. Where was I? Oh, yes. If you would like to help us, do share the content. And as well, Kits and Cubs, you might be able to help us in other ways. Oh, Rob is from Victoria. Well, hey, that's twice we have someone from the West Coast watching us today and joining us. How lovely. How completely delightful. I hope that you enjoyed your time here. And hopefully, if we get to do something a little later again, that we will see you again. We love having a chance to have all of the members of the DamFam from wherever they are have an opportunity to participate in the chat and get all the love. So thank you so much for stopping in. it gives me a warm fuzzy. Thank you. um, if you would like to help us, please scan this QR code. Brings you to our YouTube page if you're not already there. If you're not watching on that platform, and click on our buttons like, share, and subscribe. And of course, if you're looking for notifications, because I saw some comments when Mr. Grizzly last did his show that the notice didn't pop up, click on the bell and then select all from the drop-down menu. And then hopefully you will be getting the notices when we have new stuff up. Also click on like, share, and subscribe, of course, very important. And of course, as we mentioned, share the content. If you'd like to help us in other ways, we do incur some costs to bring the show to you. And if you would like to help us with that, we would be very grateful for an enthusiastic expression of encouragement on your part in the form of a cup of coffee for Mr. Grizzly or a cup of hot chocolate for me. If you scan this QR code, it will bring you to our coffee page at ko-fi.com/eagerbeaver, where you can make a one-time or recurring donation that you can stop at any time. You're not locked into anything, but it does help us immensely. And we get about 95 to 97% of your donation when you donate through coffee. Of course, there are super chats and memberships and stickers on YouTube where we get about 70% of your donation. And if you're doing the Buy Canadian thing, a direct bank transfer to our email address, truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com, of course, ensures that your transaction is entirely Canadian, no service fees, no money goes to US CE Tech Bros, and the bonus, we get 100% of your donation there. So you get more bang for your beaver buck. Any support you can offer, even if it's just $1 or $2, is always very, very helpful. So thank you for that. Because democracy is something that you do, normally I do the petitions, but I won't do that today. Just wanted to remind you that on June 20th, we are going to host our mental health walk. And of course, I'm doing a personal little fundraiser to try to raise money for our beneficiary organizations, the Men of the North program in La Ronge, Saskatchewan, which is Indigenous led, and the Lonely Man Project, which is trying to establish a resource center there. And that's in St. John's, Newfoundland and Labrador. Of course, the goal of this is not to raise money, but more to raise awareness, to get male and male identifying people to talk to their male and male identifying friends about their mental health, because a lot of men indicate that when the poop hits the fan, they have nobody to talk to, and we should fix that. We should destigmatize men talking about their mental health, particularly to their mates, their bros, their blokes. So if you can, on the 20th or around there, call up a friend, particularly if you have that friend who's always fine. Maybe go for a walk and check in and see how they're doing. We recommend a 5-kilometer walk, so it gives you plenty of time for a good conversation. And let's help people. We recently got news of Claude Lemieux of the Montreal Canadiens, unfortunately under very, very unfortunate and tragic circumstances, horrifying circumstances, really. His life ending, and we would like that to not be the case for anyone else in this country ever. We would like people to say, hey, you know what, things are getting a little much. I'm going to pick up the phone and talk to someone. So let's destigmatize that, and let's make it natural for guys to be talking to other guys about their mental health. And if you do not have a male friend or male identifying friend to speak to, call anybody, right? And go take that walk, especially if you're the one that has a need to speak about your mental health. It's important. It really is important to talk. So, and to encourage this this behavior, to normalize it, to make it, not make it uncomfortable, or not make it something that is ridiculed or makes you that's emasculating. Everybody has a brain. Everybody has problems. So, and that's what friends are for, right? So let's encourage people to talk rather than holding it in, to release some pressure rather than letting it accumulate, and hopefully making our friendships much more real and meaningful, rather than potentially losing friendships and then going, oh my God, I never knew. Why didn't he ever talk to me? So if you're willing to help with that, I am running a little fundraiser because I like to try to do two things at once. So I'm trying to lose weight, my winter weight, to get in shape for tennis season. And if you are willing to pledge $1 or $2 per pound I lose between April 12th and June 20th, and pledge that as a donation, we would love to hear from you. Send us an email at truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com and let us know how much you would like to pledge. Of course, we would accept more if you want to, but we're asking for $1 or $2. We're not looking to break the bank here. And just want you to know that I started at 182 pounds and I clocked in at 171 this morning. So if you pledge $1, you're already on the hook for 11 if I'm able to maintain that. Okay. Just want you to know what you're getting into. So please help us with that, because democracy is something that you do, and taking care of each other is what we do as Canadians, right? Okay. Let's see. If you want to reach us on our socials, at True Eager at the Blue Sky Beaver Lodge, on Twitter, of course, True North Eager Beaver on Facebook. We have the DamFam Discord. We have Beaver Bites, our Substack. We have our coffee page, of course, and we have the DamFam Instagram run by Kit Uncover. Please join any of those to keep the conversation going. And of course, True North Eager Beaver at gmail.com. If you can't contribute financially, is where you can contribute in other ways by letting us know what you think about the show, good, bad, or ugly. We love constructive criticism and recommendations. Of course, we love compliments too. Can't go wrong with that. But we love to hear from you on that. If you have guest suggestions for our interview project shows, we'd love to hear that too. And if you have questions about politics that you would like us to answer for you, please put them in there. We're happy to include you. It's your show too. So we want to, if you want to do a little programming for us by telling us what you want to see and hear, we are going to do our best to try to make that happen for you. So please write us. Let's see what else. Words of wisdom. I'm a little bereft, and since it's 11:20, I'm just going to say, get good sleep. Which is, not very much as advice goes, but there you go. That's all I got for you at this hour. It could be a tough world out there, kids and cubs. So please be kind to and gentle with yourself, and I will be back with a little bit of Canadians who make us proud. But until then, could you please give me a Mr. Beaver? Please cue the cock on 1, 2, and 3. Let me hear it. Oh yeah, that's the good stuff there. I hear some soccer and cricket fans in there. So since you asked so nicely, here's a little cock-a-doodle-doo just for you. You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters, CanadianTarot.com, their uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community, and the Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. We are grateful to the Crier Media Network for its support, Pete Jarvis for our artwork, and Paul Joseph Something for our opening and closing sequence music. All right, let's hope that you're back, because I don't see anyone. There you go. There you are. There you are. A little bit of news of Canadians who make us proud. From the world of music, of course, because I've been promising it. The American Music Awards were held not that long ago, and there was a Canadian who did pick up an award. Justin Bieber this year picked up the Male Artist of the Year award at the American Music Awards. So that was for him. It was his 19th award in 34 nominations. prolific winner here. It's his 5th career Best Male Pop Artist Award. Says the Stratford, Ontario native, already held the record with 4 previous victories. He first won the award, previously named Favorite Pop Rock Male Artist in 2010. Bieber entered this year's ceremony in Las Vegas with 4 nominations, including Artist of the Year and Album of the Year for last year's Swag. The win brings Bieber's career total to 19, as I mentioned, tying him with the late Kenny Rogers for the second most wins by a male artist. The late Michael Jackson remains the leader among men with 24 awards. The Peaches singer made a concert comeback last month when he headlined Coachella, marking his first major show since canceling a tour in 2022 in order to deal with the health effects of Ramsay-Hunt syndrome. And as well, in the world of music, the rapper Drake, who I believe, I'm not sure if he released his album Iceman already, or if there was just promo for it at the moment, but he broke Michael Jackson's record for #1 hits. It seems that the Toronto rap star has shattered the long-standing record held by Michael Jackson for most #1s on the Billboard Hot 100 by a solo male artist. His song Janice STFU entered at the top of the chart this week following the release of his trilogy of albums. Billboard says that pushes Drake's career total to 14 chart toppers, tying him with Taylor Swift and Rihanna for the most #1 singles among all artists. Only Mariah Carey with 19 and the Beatles with 20 have more. Drake also set a new record for most entries on the Hot 100 in a single week, placing 42 songs on the chart. That surpasses Morgan Wallen's 2025 record of 37, which broke his previous high of 36. The Hotline Bling artist has repeatedly alluded to Michael Jackson in his music in recent years, framing his own legacy in relation to the pop icons. The cover of his new album, Iceman, also appears to nod to the late singer, featuring a rhinestone-studded glove reminiscent of Jackson's signature accessory. This week, Drake also became the first artist to claim the top 3 spots on Billboard's Top 200 album chart. His trilogy of albums, Iceman, Habibi, and Maid of Honor, debuted as 1, 2, and 3 respectively on the chart, dated May 30th. The releases mark Drake's first solo project since his high-profile feud with Kendrick Lamar in 2024, with references to the rivalry woven through several tracks. Iceman arrived after nearly a year of build-up, during which Drake teased the project with a series of public stunts, including a large ice block installation in a downtown Toronto parking lot with the album's release date hidden inside. He launched the album release on May 15th by lighting Toronto's CN Tower in an icy blue hue before surprise dropping the other 2 albums. So there you go, from the world of music and from the world of, just a good community service and leadership. There is some news here about a young man from the Windsor area whose name is Tianyu Lin. And he's been recognized nationwide for his leadership and advocacy work in the community. He's a grade 12 student at Vincent Massey Secondary School, and he has been named one of just 20 recipients across Canada of the 2026 TD Scholarships for Community Leadership Program. The scholarship is valued at up to $70,000 and also includes access to summer internships and a national scholars network. Lynn has focused much of his volunteer work on youth mental health and helping students access leadership opportunities. He also founded a student mental health committee, which has connected representatives from 13 schools in the Greater Essex County District School Board to share ideas and strategies to support students during monthly meetings. As president of his DECA team for business, Lynn focused on cultivating leadership in his peer group and mentoring students to help them find their voice and build confidence in public speaking. Lynn says receiving the scholarship was a surreal moment. Quote, "When I got the news, at first I couldn't even process it. It was very ironic because I was at my DECA club when I received the news, which is where I did a lot of my community work. So it was really a full circle moment. Of course, I couldn't tell anyone at the club then, but I called my parents and they were really excited for me," he said. Lynn says as a student, he knows how difficult it can be to start student societies. Quote, "I wanted to create a mental health committee connecting all the student leaders across the board, so we had a representative from each of the 13 schools in the Greater Essex County District School Board, and we assisted them with various strategies to continue to promote mental health advocacy within their various schools." He says he still can't believe he's one of the recipients. Quote, I'm extremely excited. I just came back from Ottawa attending the National Awards ceremony, and it's genuinely awesome to see so many great like-minded individuals who really care about the future. Lynn will attend the University of Waterloo this fall in the Computer Science Co-op program. He hopes to create softwares and assistants that can continue to support students. And this was an article by Megan Delorier and Rob Hindi at CTV News. And since there is an image of the young Canadian of whom we can all be very, very, very proud, why not give him a little FaceTime here on the show as we sign off for the night. And just waiting for the screen to come back because it's a little delayed. And here he is, Kits and Cubs, this young man who clearly understands the value of us taking care of our mental health and has taken it upon himself to make Windsor just a little bit more of a better place. And I know that we have some people from the area on the chat here, and I'm sure that is going to make you particularly proud. So there you go, Kits and Cubs. That's all I got for you today. Amour et bisous. And we will see you tomorrow again, not at a regular time, but after Felix Auger-Aliassime completes his match, which we very much hope will be a win so that he can continue on the road to making history. He already has made history by qualifying for the quarterfinal. He becomes the first Canadian man in history to have qualified for the quarterfinals of every single one of the 4 Grand Slams. But let's see if we can. That's not enough. We want more. We want more. And of course, hoping that Gabriela Dabrowski advances to, I believe it is the final of, I believe, the mixed doubles tournament as well. So lots to cheer for. And we will see you tomorrow, hopefully in a very happy state with some good news to report on their success. Until then, sleep well, sweet dreams. Thank you for joining me for a special True North Eager Beaver Morning Show nights, or Beaver After Dark. And sweet dreams, everyone. Bye.